More.
All right, we did the best we could. Hopefully we got something. And I don't know, does anybody need sign language? Okay, you're on.
Yeah, apologies for that. It is a little bit hard to see the pointer being that far away, but also to look at what you're showing and to talk through that. So what I'll do is try to yell as loud as I can. I know there's a little bit of background noise in here. And Shilpa's going to help, I think, walk through on the screen as I describe the improvements. So,
And you have a pointer too, that might help.
yeah, unfortunately, a pointer on a TV screen disappears.
Oh.
Yes, thank you. Well,
I had never thought about that. That's true.
oh, like a stick.
Oh, yeah.
I can start there while he's talking.
Because otherwise you look it all over and by the time you focus on it, that she's moved on to something else.
Thank you. We'll do our best to describe it and have you follow along. So, as Shilpa was talking about the existing interchange, you have the only way, the only way on and off is through the freeway. So you have both directions of I-5. If you're coming southbound I-5, it's not on the screen, southbound on I-5, you get off and you make the slight right end at Center Street, right? Or, yeah. And to get back on the freeway going southbound, you have the same intersection on the west side.
Right.
And then for the northbound direction, you get off, you can either swing right in front of the old Safeway, now Floor and Decor, or go up to the intersection that's right out here in front of Taco Bell. Might be pointing the wrong direction. Or continue on over to the west side. In the reverse direction from the same location to get northbound, the loop ramp on that east side to get on northbound. So, in what's being proposed, and many of you might have heard of what we call it a partial interchange. I want to be clear, the discussion about partial interchange, it means that the ramps that are coming directly from the interstate down to the island are to and from the north. So let me describe that. Oh, great. So if you're coming southbound on I-5 and you want to go to Hayden Island, come across the bridge, and you take the exit and you end up at the south end of the island on Jansen Drive. If you're going to go head back north to North I-5, on the east side, you take the on-ramp that goes up to I-5. All right? So that's the half of the interchange. It's partial interchange. Now let's talk about the other half. If you were coming from downtown Portland and coming northbound on I-5, you would take the Marine Drive exit. And on that long exit ramp, you would have an option to go stay right, go to Marine Drive, or take a new left ramp, and that goes underneath the Marine Drive. It goes down to a local road intersection. You you take a right.
Local road intersection, is that a light?
That's this
Is that
new
stop
road.
lights?
That's a new road that goes under the freeway.
Stop
east-west.
lights?
We don't know, it might be a stoplight, it might be a roundabout, we just know it's an intersection at this time.
But it's
As we
gonna-
get more
Let me walk through that, and then we'll take the questions
Okay.
about it, just so you can get the whole path. So you go to the intersection, you head right, and you take another right to go onto what we call an arterial bridge. And you end up at Tomahawk Island Drive. And Tomahawk Island Drive in this instance is a connection of the existing Tomahawk Island Drive on the east side under the freeway to the west side of the I-5, ends up the alignment that Shilpa is pointing out underneath that. So that's if you're coming from the south and you want to get off to Hayden Island. Now, to go in the reverse direction from Hayden Island, you find your way to the same intersection on Tomahawk Island Drive. You go across the arterial bridge,
Underground.
a bridge over North Portland Harbor. You go left, back onto that local street that goes under I-5, and then you get onto the ramp that goes to southbound I-5.
Good God.
That ramp
Jesus.
then connects up with the Marine Drive ramp. Those go over the top of the exit to Denver from I-5. And what we call that is a braided ramp. And so you don't mix with the traffic that's going to Denver anymore. That's a very short distance. So if people were going southbound on I-5 and they want to go to Kenton, they take the Denver Victory exit.
Oh, Interstate Avenue.
Yes, Interstate Avenue. So they take that exit. Today, those people fight with people coming on from Marine Drive, and it's a very short distance to weave. So in this proposed investment, we grade those ramps. The Marine Drive ramp and the Hayden Island on-ramp, they both come in, go over the top of that off-ramp to Interstate.
Are you talking about double decking?
So
Or there was a word that I did not understand.
grade. So yes, it is a bridge. One bridge goes over
Another
the
bridge.
off-ramp goes off at the level it is today. The Marine Drive and the Hayden Island ramps that come on go over the top of that, and then they dive down onto I-5 south of Victory. So those are the two ways on and off the island. You may have heard it's called a partial interchange. That's because the two ramps directly down to the freeway or to Hayden Island go to and from the north, and again those south side ramps connect with Marine Drive. But the new part of that is that there's an arterial bridge goes across the harbor that has a bicycle and pedestrian facility. It has the ability to get on and off the island without getting onto the interstate. The other way on and off, of course, is with light rail. Light rail transit on the west side of Hayden Island. So the extension out of Expo goes underneath Marine Drive, over the levee. It is across the harbor. It is elevated across the island.
Hey folks, it's kind of hard for people in the back to hear because of the noise, white noise up here. So if you could please try to limit your whispering, because the more you whisper, the further people can't hear. Because we don't have a microphone.
What you're saying.
Come on up.
Yellow for us.
Come on forward. There's chairs up here. There's 3 chairs here and there's chairs there.
B, can you hear me all right?
No, we
She can
can't.
move up.
Great, thank you.
Move up.
Okay,
There's a whole bunch more chairs up here.
so light rail again, coming across the harbor, elevated across the island. That means it's a level above Jansen Drive, Tomahawk Island Drive, Hayden Island Drive. So it does not interact with those 3 cross streets, meaning they're not at grade intersections with light rail. But that also means there's an elevated station, and it's showing that station between Tomahawk Island Drive and Hayden Island Drive. So what you see on Hayden Island are some local street improvements. You don't currently have really welcoming streets for active transportation. People walk, bike, and roll to get east and west across I-5. The 3 routes that you see, you have 2 today that are less than adequate. The one on the south side, you're going through a big dip and it's dark. The one on the north side, really, if you're on the ramp side of that, it doesn't have any pedestrian facilities, and the one on the even further north than that is. This provides the local street improvements that provide that active transportation improvement, and gets it more attractive to cross I-5, walking, biking, rolling, if that's your choice. What else, Shilpa, for?
The Tomahawk Island.
So Tomahawk Island Drive, again, is an extension of the existing alignment under the freeway to connect to the west side.
Can you just do that one coming, like, I'm gonna go south now, I'm confused, you got me going.
From the island
Circles.
to southbound I-5?
Yeah.
Yes. So make your way to the intersection of Tomahawk Island Drive and Arterial Bridge, New Street. Go southbound across the harbor. Go to the first intersection. Then you're going to head back west. You're going to take a left and head back west, go under the freeway, and take the second left to get on the freeway. And that mixes with a bunch of roads there, but it's not at the same level. There's underneath the other roads that are there. So
We have a question here in the red.
Yeah, have you contacted the,
It's actually the
the
person
Coast
there.
Guard and the marine traffic?
Nope.
this person first, I think,
Yes.
is, and
I
then
have a
I'll come back.
question. If that's elevated, is it ADA, are there elevators? And how does it coordinate with the metro bus system? I mean, is all that figured out or not?
That's a great question. So all of our walking, biking, rolling connections will meet ADA requirements. And I mentioned that the transit is at a level above. We're currently at a conceptual level design, but as we go through this discussion and all the design work, we'll work to figure out the best ways to get people from that lower level to the upper level, including, again, all disabled, all people of all shapes, colors, sizes, everything. So, and to meet the requirements of ADA.
And there is one question here to the side. Yes.
Does any of this connect with the Coast Guard, and have you connected with the Washington State plans?
So we're working closely with the Coast Guard for, we're required to get a bridge permit for river navigation, whatever effects we have crossing the river. So we're working very closely with the U.S. Coast Guard. You heard me mention, if you were here earlier in the presentation, we have 3 different bridge configurations, for instance, and those address the concerns of the Coast Guard as well for river navigation.
And then
And
there
the
was
second question you had was for.
How do your plans connect with the Washington State plans?
So, how do they connect with the Washington State plans? This program is a bi-state program. It's led by the 2 DOTs. We have 4 owners in the program: the 2 DOTs and the 2 transit agencies. That means WashDOT, ODOT, and TriMet and CTRAN. And then we have the 6 other program partners, all the local agencies. We're working closely together. They're all part of the executive steering committee for the program, and we're well coordinated with both all plans for both the metro region of Portland and Vancouver.
Then we have a question right there in the back.
My questions are about distance. So the first one is, how long in miles is it to get from the on-ramp where you're starting to get onto that local bridge to when you finally get onto I-5 South? That's my first question. And then my second question is, what is the elevation of the max station on the island? Like, yes, 5% grade of a ramp. Right now, it's like 10 feet of elevation that you go at a little incline to get onto our current bridge. So how tall is it to get up to the max station and to where you can cross the bridge with your design?
You can come back.
So, yeah, go ahead. So 2 responses for you. Thanks, B, for your questions. We don't have an exact distance of that, but we can get back to you on that. On the distance of the direction from Hayden Island to the south. I think was that your specific?
Yeah.
Yeah,
we
we can get that to you.
local bridge until you finally get onto I-5.
Yeah, we'll get that for you.
And then just to pause real quick, I know that you 2 have your hands up. Is it pertaining to something that he's already said? Because we still have a bunch more slides and we might get to it. So just wanted to gauge that real fast.
Just wanted to say there was a second question too.
Yeah,
With the height of the transit
Oh, yeah.
station.
The transit and the pedestrian access to cross.
Yeah, the transit station also, we don't have, so we have approximate location over here, but we're not in the design stage to say that this is exactly how high it is. There might be some that we have, but it's not really the distance. We just know that it's not like almost at the bridge or completely at ground, has to be somewhere in the middle. And so we have to look at options like for like if people are going to go up, is escalators, elevators, as well as stairs. So those are options we have to look at for that location. For the bridge over there too, is like that is the area where it is coming down. So with the black that you see is where we're back on like existing ground on fill, and this is the bridge level. But this is where it's coming down. I don't have the exact level like elevation at this point, but it's going to be high up in the middle and it's coming down over here to meet back up down here.
But so I'll add a little bit to that, which is the roads underneath, they require about 17 feet of clearance.
Right.
So at a very minimum, our bridges wouldn't be until above that. So we have another 6-8 feet minimum before you can get to what would be the lowest level of the transit. You know, like she mentioned, Shilpa mentioned that the design isn't there yet to be done and know what the exact height is. But it's,
Do you have like a minimum? It would be at least this high above the ground or?
Like Yeah, that is
Approximate?
that is a 17-foot clearance that we need above the roadway, like.
Plus a
so now
structure.
we have the roadway here, so we need a clearance of 17 feet, and then it's like the 5, 6, 7 feet that you need for the platform itself, and then you have the train above it.
So probably minimum, you're about 23 feet minimum. That's a give or take a few feet, depending on the designs, so,
To the max station?
to the
Yeah.
max station, yes.
And what about to cross the bridge?
So the crossing of the river, again, based on the bridge configurations, we have a slightly different top elevation, for instance, whether you're on the bike pad or the roadway. And then the different configurations have a little bit different elevation as well. So we have the clearance elevations of that, and we can talk about in general what that means for where the bike pads would be, but they are different in the different configurations.
Minimum?
So
You're gonna be
So the-
at least this tall?
So the minimum over here in this location is still gonna be the 17-foot clearance, because they'll be going over Tomahawk Island Drive, drive extension over here too, so it's a 17 feet, and then again, 5, 6 feet that we have, so this might be a little higher than that. But that's the minimum that we need to be at this point.
To
You're
get
actually coming
access
down.
to the bridge, so you're gonna climb from 17 feet, 100 feet up, crossing the bridge in how short of a distance? That doesn't seem like a 5% grade to me.
The grades that we have over here are between 3 and 4%, depending on the configuration that we have. Because they're different, they have high points in the middle, like Casey said, if it is a lift span versus single level versus a double level. But the maximum we can even go, even with exceptions, with any of the states, is the maximum of 4%. We cannot, that is something we have to get exceptions and show documentation that we'll have to go to that level. So anything about 3% for both states, we need to get exceptions. So we'll be between 3 and 4.
And Shilpa's talking about the roadway
Right.
for active transportation, of course, for
I'm talking about
ADA.
pedestrian access.
So
It's good.
ADA has to be under 5%. The bicycle and pedestrian, as Shilpa mentioned, is going across the river, follows the roadway grade, which is 3 to 4% in the different configurations.
Right, and also even though it's 5%, like we in our design would not go even over 4.5%, because if there's any correction to be made during construction, we don't want to go close to 5%. So we're designing all active transportation 4.5 and below.
So there's a couple of other questions here from folks who haven't gotten a chance to ask questions.
Will
And
we be
these
seeing
two, well,
pictures?
these two ladies are actually first, and then I'll go to you, sir. So would you like to ask your
I think you
question?
answered the question, I just want
Okay.
to know how tall the overall, each different version of this, how tall the bridge is gonna be, I mean, in general.
Okay.
Thank
In
you.
the middle of the river, or?
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
But where?
And
Over the
then,
island.
ma'am, go
Oh,
ahead.
but it's so fine, I think you answered it.
Okay.
Was it 100
We're
feet?
seeing some bird's eye views. Will we be seeing pictures that are 3D or horizontal view?
We do have visualizations that we have on our website that you can see the different types of views, and you can get a little bit closer in and look at these visualizations. And so they are available on the website.
And then we can see which businesses are going to go away.
Not quite. You get to see the types of structures with the visualizations and
Okay, so at your last presentation that we had over at the Red Lion, and I don't think you folks were there, but somebody was. And they said that the incline for the bridge was gonna start clear back at Delta Park. Is that the case now, or is it gonna be, where is it gonna start and how high? By the time you get to the middle of the bridge, you're up there, what are we talking about?
So, just a correction, the incline for the main river crossing does not start at Delta Park. It does not start at Delta Park.
Okay.
It starts on Hayden Island and then goes north from there.
Okay,
We're
so-
talking about.
But we have a second bridge here.
Yes.
We have another bridge here across the North Portland Harbor, for which it will be starting at this area. Not many,
San
right?
Francisco.
There is an incline where Shilpa was just pointing, but it's to get across the North Portland Harbor Bridge. And that's existing incline that's there today.
Nothing else is actually going south. Yeah.
Say that again?
Nothing else going south once you get off of the Harbor Bridge is effective as far as that goes. That's back down to the
Yes.
level.
Correct.
now.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, and this area is back down to where it is today.
So, my question, I guess, is when you're going over Hayden Island, I mean, all of us basically live there. And I just want to understand what kind of an impact this bridge is going to have on the island as far as an eyesore goes, you know, basically. What's it going to do to our island? What's it going to do to the mall? What's it going to do to property values? I just like to understand what you're doing.
That's a great question that a lot of people have, absolutely. The reason for us coming and showing what the improvements are tonight is to get you familiar with looking at those investments when we publish our draft environmental impact statement late this year. That will describe all of the impacts from whether it's residential, commercial, air, noise, all of the impacts that you're worried about would be described in that report.
See, you guys aren't the first people that come and talk to us. Over the years, we've lived on the island 38 years. I don't even know how many different people come out and talk about this, and they all say different things. So it's just confusing, to be honest with you.
It's very large, and that's not, I can appreciate that. It is very big in that aspect. We're trying to make it as simple as possible to understand, and it is complex.
I think you had a question earlier too. Yeah.
I just wanted a clarification on the height in the center of the river.
Yeah, so with the fixed span that we have, we're looking at the middle 116 feet. 116 feet is what we're looking at. But the other option that Casey mentioned today, when the lift bridge goes out, we have a clearance of 178 feet. And that's what the Coast Guard has requested that we study. So the options that Casey mentioned before, where we are looking at a lift span in the document, is going to be up at, when the lift span is up, it's going to be at 178 feet. So we're looking at both options and analyzing them.
Yeah. That's the clearance under the bridge. In the version that has the lift, it's slightly less than the 116 feet when it's in a closed position. Say around 90 feet in the closed position. 90 to 100 is, yeah.
So I see a few hands. I want to just pause since we did have a long break trying to figure out the audio. If you could say your question out loud, we're gonna take them down, but I'd like to get through a few more slides because your questions might be answered in future slides because we're barely halfway through our slide deck right now. So I don't want to I want you to say it still verbally, and I will make sure to jot them down, and if we don't get to them in the next 5 slides, then we'll start answering them. I just don't want us to not get further in and miss other people's questions as well. So let's start with you in the way back with your question.
The basic footprint is not going to change a great deal in this direction east or west. Basically, it's no map.
Okay.
Change much east or west.
Yep. And so we got your question about the footprint and whether or not it'll change. There was someone over here. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify about the fixed span option. There is no option where the fixed span rises to 178 feet, correct?
Correct.
The only option where it rises to 178 feet is the lift span option.
Come back. Great.
Yeah.
We'll answer that.
And then there was someone in the there we are, and then you.
So there are some estimates that the population on the island could grow by as much as 30%. Are you anticipating that you will be able to reduce congestion on the island as well as account for that population growth that is expected?
Got it. So a great question about population growth and impacts to congestion on the island. Thank you.
Y'all, you have shown how you go south, but if you showed us on the map how you get to the north, could you repeat that?
Okay. And then the question was asking to repeat how would one go northbound? And so we'll actually answer the northbound one now because we're moving away from the map in the next slide, and so I'm going to get to that right now.
So Shilpa pointed out, so if you're coming from the north to get onto the island?
No.
You're getting on from the island to go north?
On the island, going north.
So Shilpa's going to point to Jansen Drive at the south end of the island and an on-ramp then that would get onto I-5 directly.
How would you get to
and then you're coming back.
How do you get onto that, auxiliary road, to go north? We're going north.
So if you want to.
Show me again.
So
I'm
where are
sorry.
you coming from?
I'm coming from West Hayden Island.
West Hayden Island, and where do you want to go to?
North.
To Vancouver?
It does not matter.
Yeah.
Vancouver?
Seattle, DC, Washington.
Sure, Washington, okay. So West Hayden Island to Vancouver, Shelba.
Okay, yeah. So West Hayden Island, we have two ways to get to it. Either if you come on Hayden Island Drive, come here and take this ramp and go north. If you're on Jansen Avenue, come to the same intersection, make a left and go north.
Okay. And so is there any more questions that folks want me to write down?
Where will the toll areas be on that map?
Okay.
Just one in the middle or all these extra exits and entries? Will have toll on them?
Toll would be for people crossing the main river.
Where is that at? Where are you talking?
So
about me?
the main river being north of Hayden Island. So the
Okay,
exact
go-
location of
Going
the.
to Washington
Yes,
there
yes.
as you cross past.
Yes.
Yeah.
The exact
Alright.
location of where the toll sits and the collection sits, I can't tell you that it's not on Hayden Island, but it will be for
So
traffic.
we'll just be paying
to
a
and from
toll
north.
going to Washington then?
Everyone that goes across that river would pay a toll.
And not to Portland?
Both
Under
ways.
the toll program.
No, sorry, both ways. If whether you're coming from Washington or from Oregon, if you're using the bridge, pay the same toll.
But will that toll Hayden Island to get on and off the bridge? I mean, on and off the island?
Not to Portland, but yes to Washington.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. So I wrote down these other questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I wrote down these other questions. We're gonna go through a few more slides. And like, as I promised, if we don't get to answering these in the next 5, then we'll pause and come to answer these.
There are a few more movements we need to finish up on the map too before we go to the slides. We'll do the Kenton one and then Marine Drive.
Yeah.
Because we're at 8 o'clock.
Okay. So we wanted to cover Hayden Island going to Kenton, down Interstate Avenue.
Where our post office is now and our bank.
Great. That is good service.
Yeah.
All right, so to go from Hayden Island to Kenton, the same path to cross the arterial bridge, to go to the first intersection, go underneath on that road that goes underneath all Marine Drive, heading over to the extension of Expo Road. So this is now Expo Road. It doesn't currently go through. Head down all the way to Expo Road, and you end up down to Victory Boulevard, and you can make your way there to Kenton.
Is that in front of the Expo Center or behind it?
On the freeway side of Expo Center.
What about the golf course?
Are you going golfing? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes. So the other one was to get to Marine Drive, right? Sheldon?
Actually, the way back also, I was going to show the way back also is different from today. So
The way back from Kenton to Hayden Island. Take the exit to Victory off of Interstate, head west on Victory, over to Expo Road, and then go in the opposite direction, the same path.
Because that's where all the medical offices are, the route we have to take also.
Yes.
Really adds a lot of extra.
The reason to go through that is because today you can get on the island and off at Interstate. Or you can get on from the island heading southbound and you can get off at Interstate. Cannot do that in this.
We're losing the interstate interchange.
Yeah, it's still there, but because of that braid,
So
when
today-
you get on, you bypass that.
So today you get on Interstate here and you take the exit right here to go to Interstate Avenue, but because this is graded right now with the different interchange, this is the alternate way to get to it, is the local access bridge.
So I want to pause here because our chair's at the podium and just do a time check.
No,
It's
no.
8 o'clock. Just want to make sure we're still
We're here
good.
to listen.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're still good on the room reservation. So we're still good.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Can I get down your question?
Can you assure me, based on her question, that police and fire and medical access is gonna be part of your planning? Because I heard her say that, and your access to some of this depletes our relationship with the already kind of non-existing police and fire. So I wanna be sure you've got that in your future planning.
So, we do have a future slide on safety that we can get to your question with that one. And,
Just put it in your file.
yep, I got it, I wrote it down.
I wanna
And,
know that they're in some of your planning.
yes, and I will make sure that we get to that. Let's go over to finish up what Shilpa wanted and go to the next slide. And I did get your question, I wrote down.
Active transportation. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. The last, I think, part we're going through is active transportation. Especially, we talked a little bit about light rail going across the island, shared use path going across the island, north-south. So if you're heading to Washington or heading to Portland. The lime green in there, the bright green shows a shared use path across the island in the north-south direction. It's hard to see there, but on the north end of the island, we show a connection from where it's connected to the bridge down to Hayden Island Drive. And then also at the more south end of the island, we show a connection that actually ends up more at Tomahawk Island Drive. And that's to try to spread out some of those connections from an elevated level down to the ground. But that continuous path goes into Vancouver, and then also to the south, crosses the arterial bridge and connects up with the 40-mile loop trail. And then also connects to the south with existing path through Delta Park that's there. And then we're also studying on the west side a connection of the shared use path along Expo Road down to the Victory interchange. So those are just the shared use path. Keep in mind all of the local roads that we're talking about, sidewalks, bicycle lane, they aren't there today. All right.
So,
I think Grace.
Okay.
let's go to the next slides. Thank you all for being so patient.
So my name is Nanette Imus, and I'll be presenting the urban design portion of today's presentation. You can't hear. Louder? Louder, okay.
Yeah.
I'll try. So on the map in front of you, you will see an aerial of the IBR corridor in the same orientation as the previous maps. North Portland is on the left side, and Vancouver waterfront is on the right. We have broken up the IBR corridor into several focus areas. These focus areas help us organize and approach the urban design lens at a finer detail. And today we will be talking about the Hayden Island focus area.
Yay.
Previously, we've looked at the IBR program at two larger scales, the extra large scale and the large, which looks at the program from a regional and corridor scale. Today, we'd like to talk about the medium scale, which is closer to local neighborhood context. We specifically want to talk about existing conditions and future plans for Hayden Island. In the future, we'll come back and talk about the smaller scale, which kind of addresses some of the opportunities and challenges that we'll talk about today. Before we dive into things, we wanted to point out that some of the concepts that we talk about today are not all within the IBR program. Some of these concepts are spaces are relative to the area that we're looking at, and we want to make sure that we're taking into consideration all of the existing conditions and future plans of the area. So looking at existing conditions, we decided to look at Hayden Island in terms of character zones of what's existing today. So on the top upper left-hand corner, outlined in green, is the open space. As you move further to the east, there's a lighter gray area outlined representing the industrial area on the island. There are two yellow areas outlined in yellow representing the residential areas on the island, as well as the the floating homes on the south side of the island. And then we also wanted to point out the red outline, which is the Jansen Beach Retail Center,
And then the bluish purple outlined area is what we call the freeway adjacent character zone, which is very automobile focused.
Sorry, did you say the yellow was residential zone?
Correct.
You know the
Area. Just residential area in general. It's not a zoning map. It's just how we identify the characteristics of the island today.
Too small. Yeah. People live on boats. People live all the way to the end of the island. You're missing a lot of people.
We left out the RV park.
No, she-
No, that was on there.
That was on there. It's a big
That's
one.
right here. Yellow.
Yeah, and also want to say these are like not the boundaries, these are just areas that we're looking at, so they might not like maybe include some of the suburban or some of the houses, but these are like general areas we're talking about. We're not trying to define them, we're not trying to create the zones, this is just what's out there existing.
And just so folks know, you all should have access to the slides through your secretary here. And so if you'd like the slide deck, you can just ask her for it and she'll email them to you.
And if you missed anything in this one, if you were in another neighborhood the other day, somebody said missed something, please let us know, we're happy to add them to these slides.
The blue area is the marine zone that we have outlined, which is on the east side of the island.
That's the residential zone too, right?
Yes, that's the floating homes, that's
Correct.
right, yeah.
Is that going through the park there, the bridge? Cause there's the park right there by residential before it starts, or right in that area.
This is all existing, this is the existing bridge. This does not show the new bridge yet. This
Oh,
is all
okay.
This is
today.
just existing conditions
Yes.
today.
Okay, thank you.
And it's not supposed to be a zoning map, it's just how we're characterizing the neighborhoods. I understand that people live all over the island, that, I wasn't trying to say they don't.
Where's the new bridge in relation to the existing bridge?
I will get there, I promise. Good question, though, good question. So diving in on what's existing today, the two images on the left-hand side represent the residential mobile home park characteristics to give a feel of what those look like. Jansen Beach Center, Retail Center is on the top right, and on the bottom is the typical street feel for Jansen Beach Center. We wanted to notate that these are new streets and they are updated to City of Portland standards. And we also want to show that we would like to connect this for the future so we understand how the future grid of Hayden Island works. Focusing on the east side of the island, you have a view of North Portland Harbor on the top left. The bottom right is a view of North Tomahawk Island Drive, which shows the suburban or more residential zone on the island. The top right shows North Jansen Drive, which kind of shows the underpass that connects from east to west across the island on the southern side. And then the bottom right is Holiday Inn, which is another landmark on the island that's important. We also want to point out future plans. The Hayden Island plan came out of the previous IBR replacement program in the Columbia River Crossing. And this is might be hard to see. In the center, you will see a black dashed line that represents the future light rail system. And then there's a little location right here that shows where the elevated transit station would be.
For the CRC.
For CRC. This is for the CRC plan. We're just showing what was done back then. On the bottom left-hand side, you will see this area for a new transit-oriented neighborhood, which would be higher density. There's the retail center where Jansen Beach Retail Center is located. And then the lighter pink would be a future retail center to serve local residents on the island. And then there's also the green shaded area on the north, right under the bridge, which would be a future open space. And this was done back in 2009. We just wanted to point out what was done.
This is also something that the city had planned. It is not saying that the project is not changing this. This is what the city would like to see like a little bit. That's the plan that they have right now.
Can you see your house?
Now I want to focus on what was shown in the LPA and talk about some opportunities and constraints that come with it. In the very center, you will see this golden box right here. That is the proposed elevated station. And then the red rectangle that's around it shows the boundary of which that station can move north or south. It can go closer to Hayden Island Drive, or this station can move down to Tomahawk Island Drive. and it can even span across the road itself. The 3 light blue arrows that you see represent primary bike and pedestrian routes that go underneath the bridge. The one to the north is Hayden Island Drive. Tomahawk Island Drive would be a new connection. It does not exist today. And then the bottom one would be improving North Jansen Drive for pedestrians and bicyclists along with vehicles. We're also showing where the shared use path is, which would be elevated along here, and how you can get down, similar to what Casey and Shilpa explained earlier. You will touch down on North Tomahawk Island Drive. And then per someone's question earlier, it was a great question. It was about how do I get to the station up high. This yellow area right here is kind of showing where it will be pedestrian focused. Under the station, we would have a plaza entry where you would come to, and that's where you would find your elevator, your stairs, or if it's desired, ramps to get you up to the station. So that's what that's meant to represent. And then the light purple shades right here, here and here, are meant to show future land use, which would be transit oriented and retail, etc. And then at the top you see the green, which would be the potential for the future open space that we had showed on the Hayden Island plan. There's also 3 bus locations that you'll see in gray, these gray circles. Those are all being studied right now as potential for bus transfers.
We have a question. Yeah, good.
The last bridge we talked about a big pond or the runoff coming off the bridges. Is that included in this?
It's not right now. It's not in this diagram, but that is something that they are definitely studying.
Yeah. So along the roll map that we showed before, there's some areas that we highlighted. So today, none of the entire area is not being treated for stormwater management. It just goes into the river. So, but every road we touch, the entire stretch of 5 miles, we will be treating water. But we'll be looking at the first location we'll look at is the right of way that the states have. With inside the changes and see how we can fit those ponds in there. So we have some locations in the other map showing where they might be. We don't know the size of it yet, or if they need like other areas in there. But that is something we are studying, and we will be treating all the stormwater.
Is the future green area next to the bridge and is that owned by the city of Portland now, or who owns that?
No, I believe that's private. I think this is underneath the bridge. This is on inside. That's the existing bridge. So that's underneath the bridge, and that I believe is private. But we're not showing that us changing that as just a city plan. Like in the future, they would like that to be a park area. But we're just working with the city and what plans that they have.
Let's go through the few left that you have, and then go back to these questions that we have written down.
I actually was prompting more questions, so I don't know if you're going to say these.
Yeah, let's pause that and let's go to the questions that we have written down, and just keep in mind, folks. I'm gonna try to make sure that we can get to all these. It's the Chrome.
Sorry.
No worries. Get to these questions in a way that makes sense. So now that we've talked a little bit about urban design, I think that we can answer the question around how are we considering congestion due to population growth on the island when it comes to, now we've talked about active transportation, urban design, and the bridge itself.
So yes, we are working with the city and also with Metro, which does the regional planning for this entire area, and also RTC, which does the planning for the Southwest Washington area. So we work with them, and they have plans saying in 2040, this is what we're expecting, and 2045 is what they're working on right now. So we take that into consideration, and that is the volume that we're trying to design for, saying if there is an increase in growth, what does it mean for traffic? What does it mean for people walking and biking? What does it mean if their businesses, if they're zoning, just like what we saw for the City of Portland plan. That's why we showed the plan is like we have to think in the future also, not just like today, but because we're building for existing and for the future. So that's going to be included. And actual traffic numbers and how it's going to be, what the congestion is going to be, improvement is going to be in the document that we see at the end of the year. So that will show us the numbers for that. But that is what we're analyzing for the future.
And so I think a good follow-up question to that question is the question around access for police, fire, and medical. And so now that we've talked about the different amount of lanes, the arterial bridge, the urban design in that area, could you please address that question around police, fire, and medical access to Hayden Island?
There's already fire department here.
Now, how would it impact with all the things going on? That was the question that someone had asked.
They're gonna have to use that back road.
So we're working closely with both the city, the local agencies, but we're also working with within them and the emergency services. So both police, fire, medical, emergency, to understand what the improvements mean, how they gain access. If there's a change in access, what does that mean for their routes? So those are conversations that we're having now, as early as talking about how simply walking across a path, across the river, for instance, how they would get to you if you're on the path, how the existing residents do if a change in their route goes. So those are things that we're working closely with. We have a long ways to go to talk with them as well about that.
And then there was, well, we still have one last parking lot question before we get to the new ones.
So I guess we see the hand, and Solomon's just gonna get through the other questions, and we'll come to you too. Thanks.
So the question was in regards to the footprint, and how does what we're talking about here with the urban design and with access to Hayden Island and the interchanges, how does that impact compared to our current footprint of the bridge, and what's potential increase or decrease to that footprint?
I heard that a little, was that the question? I think I heard that a little different. Is the footprint going to change from existing, or is the footprint that we're showing here in the document, is that going to change? Can they clarify?
Is the
Yeah, back here, yes.
Footprint is the basic footprint going to change a great deal from the east to the west?
Yes.
By which way and by how much? Ballpark.
So the proposed bridge is going to be just west of the existing bridge. So the footprint here is going to shift from here to over here, to the other side in there. But then we have to come back to existing when we get to the North Portland Harbor Bridge, that area. By the time we get to Marine Drive, we're back in existing again. Similarly in Vancouver, after 14, we're back in existing.
And one follow-up on that is just, when you look at that map, if you can look online or whatever resource, there's some existing roads shown underneath, and you can kind of see what that existing road is compared to where the improvements are. So it gives you a perspective of, just where that is.
And then we had a question back there with the one with the darker top, and then the one right here in front, and then our secretary had a question as well.
The purpose and needs statement, excuse me, says that the center of the project area are the ports and the transcontinental rail line bridge. The current purpose and needs statement says that. Your maps aren't showing that. Where are the alternatives that are centered on the center of the project area? One, and since we're in a supplemental environmental impact statement, which the Coast Guard called for when they said we had to look at lift bridges, what are you doing to call in other alternatives, since a supplement is supposed to look at alternatives, especially considered when the transportation secretary came here recently? He did not support the roads corridor or the I-5 and stated publicly that he heard that there are many problems, issues, and concerns. So do you think they should look closer at the project's purpose and needs statement, and the center being the ports and industrial areas, which would leave I-5 alone?
So there's a few points I'd like to make in that. One, we did not hear that from the Secretary of Transportation, that he does support this program. And two, I don't know where you're pointing to, that the purpose and need is talking about the Transcontinental Railway. Not familiar with that reference, and I don't believe that's the case in our purpose and need. So that's an interesting take on it.
Do you have a connection to the internet? Because you just said what I said isn't correct. And I'm telling you, the purpose and need statement for this one is, my Senator, Lou Frederick, and I have had several conversations in his office, back and forth, because he tried to add to the purpose and need statement, and they didn't do anything, and it has never been formally adopted by either of the sponsor agencies, and you may not even have a valid project. So I would suppose that since it's online, you look to see if the purpose and need statement does say the center of that, before you say that my information is incorrect.
Well, thank you for the feedback. We did, I did have a slide earlier on that did talk about the purpose and need and how it was reaffirmed. And through the federal process, we're working through the supplemental statement using the purpose and need and the vision and values statement. So that's what we're moving forward with.
And then we have a question here that I'm gonna write down, and there's one more person with their hand up closer up to here, but let's go to you first.
So, I wanna know in feet how wide the current bridge is, how wide a double decker, modified LPA would be, and how wide a, single deck of the modified LPA would be.
Okay, I got that question down, and I'm just gonna repeat her question up front here. She had asked how big is the back road that goes across
Can I say I have two questions that are related, is that okay?
That's fine if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanna know how big our back road that's going, south is, cause we're gonna,
Is
might
that
have to.
the arterial bridge?
Yeah,
Is
the
that-
arterial
okay.
bridge, I wanna know, is that 2-lane, 4-lane, how big is that, how wide is that for getting trucks and people and congestion on going that way? And then I also wanna, I'm just curious, cause I was taking notes and it looked like you had 3 lanes and then 2 auxiliary lanes, so that's 10 lanes as opposed to 6 lanes that we have now, 3 that way and 3 this way. So I'm just curious about how much wider this new freeway will be. Is it gonna be double the size? Cause that's what it seems like.
Okay.
The footprint will be double, is that true?
Double lane.
I mean, the width, the footprint, right now it's got 6 lanes.
You're asking from here to here.
That's a very complex question, and we have a very complex written response.
Oh, okay.
That we can provide to.
I'm sure.
People who share.
Because it looks quite a bit bigger, you know.
Right.
I mean, at the basis of it, we do have what we're studying in NEPA again is 3 lanes through and 1 auxiliary lane. We're also studying 3 + 2 auxiliary lanes.
That's what I heard.
And your comparison is fair that today there is 3 through lanes. And then there's also ramps. And you have ramps on the island today as well.
Right.
So it does become a complex answer in that, but yeah, we certainly we
And
get
that'll
that
be
too.
complex to you like today.
So, I wanna make sure that the tone that I had, I don't want it to come off as wrong, be copy on it. I just want to make sure that you understand that the reason it's complex is because we're analyzing several different options. And so there are lots of different answers based upon whether it's single level, double level, and lift span.
And I believe, Elaine, we also have the answer to like B's question, right, that about the width, about the double level, about the single level, we also have the answer for that you can also provide.
Yes.
Don't forget the back row.
Yes.
How many
Got
lanes?
that written down. And then do you want to add a question?
Yeah, in the CRC, we ended up with 18 lanes across the island. 18 lanes of traffic with the on-ramps and off-ramps and that was, we fought for that to get it down from the 22 you started with. 23. Anyway, how many lanes do we have here across Hayden Island?
Okay.
So, great question. It does depend on a little bit of the, which analysis, or which option that we're in. So there's a range of options in that. You can count from the basic level and say at the minimum, based on this, would be such.
So, but that is also one of the reasons why we're looking
Yeah.
at moving the 2 ramps. So we had 4 ramps here in CRC. And that was what we heard a lot, like just like you said, and that was also the reasons that those 2 ramps have now moved on to the Marine Drive area, so they're not.
But
on
we have the
island.
auxiliary bridge now, which we didn't have then, so that adds however many lanes that adds.
Yes, to provide that trade-off of having the additional lanes versus access to and from the island, not getting on the freeway. That is that trade-off. Exactly, Tom. Yeah.
So to just repeat, we have different answers based off the different configurations. That's the short one sentence answer.
How do we get
And
that
so
list
how
of,
you-
how do we
how
get
you
that list of
list-
answers?
Yes, how you get that list is multiple ways. You can visit our website where you can look at each different configuration and look at visualizations as well as some preliminary information. And then also, when we get near or close to the end of the year, we'll have that draft supplemental environmental impact statement in which reports will be written that go into more detail about each different configuration and makes it easier for you to compare and contrast about what went into the studies for each of the different alternatives and configurations.
And also, like Killian mentioned, we do have that information that we can send out to this organization after this meeting too.
So let me get a couple more questions for writing down, and then we'll go through a couple more slides, and we'll do this pattern again. So let's go up front here.
About 2 hours ago, the California Utility Commission decided one way or the other to allow autonomous vehicles 24/7 with paying passengers. So I don't know how they voted, but that's a big deal. And I wonder if TriMet is the best partner. I mean, you can't say, autonomy is the answer, because TriMet is going to say no drivers. That's not going to work for us. And so I wonder about that. Can you start with a fresh slate at this time and say we're going to do an autonomy? Here's an autonomy version.
That's a great question. I wrote it down. We'll definitely get to that. And then so let's go over here.
The question I had was that when the supplemental draft EIS comes out, how much time will we have to review it before the public comment period starts?
That is a great question, and we will definitely get to that when we get to further in the slides. So that was a great question.
Smooth talking answer.
I just want to make sure that we get through a couple slides, questions, couple slides, questions. All right.
All right. That's what we have. So these are the next steps. Do you want to take the stage?
Go ahead.
So these are the next steps that we have today. The first one is the roadmap is what we wanted to show you, because that's what we're studying, and then that will have the impacts of that, all the numbers that are going to come out late 2023, end of this year, is we'll have the document. Once the document comes out, it's available for everybody. Our partners, public, will have a 60-day comment period to be able to review that and provide comments throughout that period.
That's when it comes out.
Yes.
It's not capable of being reviewed before the public comment period starts.
No, that is when it is available for the public, and then you have 60-day comment periods to do that. Yeah. And then during that time, just like we're going to have these meetings in all neighborhoods going through towards the end of the year, so we're communicating what we're looking at with the public, but we'll also have public hearings and other engagement even during the 60-day period. So we're able to answer questions and able to help with the feedback that we get from the public. The other thing that we're doing right now is, Casey mentioned earlier that we got the commitment from both states right now. The $1 billion from Washington, $1 billion from Oregon. So now we're in a good position to go to the federal agencies and apply for the grants. They like to know that we have local support for us to get the grants, and that is this summer. So we're working on that to get to the numbers that Casey had showed earlier with the budget. So we are looking at the two grants, the mega grant and the bridge investment program grant from the federal highway, and then we will also be applying for the capital investment grant for the transit portion of it. That's going to come later. Then after that is that we go to next year, we get the 60-day comment period, we get the input from the public, and then next year is when we'll be looking at, so this year we're looking at impacts, what the impacts would be, and then we hear from the public. And then the next year is what we take the input, we incorporate the input, as well as identify what the mitigation should be. How are we going to mitigate for the impacts? Because that's required from the environmental process. It's avoid, minimize, mitigate. So every impact we have to document how we're going to mitigate that. And then that will result in the final document, and followed by what's called a record of decision from the Federal Highway and Federal Transit saying there's a record of decision for this project to move forward into construction. So the year after, late 2025, 2026 is where we're looking at construction. Then the construction again is going to be in multiple parts. It's 5 miles, you won't be able to build everything at once. So the first contract, just like CRC had, is going to be the bridge itself and the approaches to the bridge. And once that is done, we're going to go beyond like north and south with different smaller contracts, and all that will depend on Ben and how we get the funding. But throughout this process, we'll be out in the community explaining what the current contract is, what's happening, what would happen to existing traffic, how can you still go through this construction, what's going to happen to the local roads, what the impacts that we're looking at that's all going to be coming as we have the design, we're going into construction. That's something we'll be out here communicating. Yes?
Once construction starts, what's the estimated time for it to be completed?
So there are, so for the bridge itself, so the first contract will be the bridge and approaches, and we're looking at 4 years. Is it correct? Yeah. Go ahead.
So we're working this year through, we're working through what we call a delivery and a delivery plan for the program. Should be available early next year. That will describe how the program can be sequenced and how long it should take to build the program. Just going back from history a little bit, though, to look at what CRC did, we identified 26 different projects within that program, and it could take as many as 10 to 15 years to build out the whole program. So it is a long duration construction. As Shilpa mentioned, it will start with somewhere likely in the river, but those things are coming, and we'll be able to share that early next year with a delivery plan.
So let's make sure that we get to some of these other slides real fast, because we are right near the end, folks. And then all these questions we can definitely get to.
I think that's the last one that we have.
So this is probably the most important one. So one of the things that we are really focused on within the program is making sure that folks know how to engage with us and how to work with us. So here are some various ways in which you can stay involved, whether it be joining our newsletter if you're not already, following the calendar. But another great way, honestly, is to submit questions and comments to the info@interstatebridge.org email address. The reason why I say it is not just because of the fact that you'll likely be talking to me and my colleague Jay, but we also do field these questions, and we can make sure that you get an answer in a way that is thoughtful. We're able to actually sit down with you and talk to you one-on-one or one-on-two, and really get to the core of your questions and some of your comments and concerns. So the other reason why I mentioned this as well is because we are going to be having a lot of movement here in the fall, to kind of touch a little bit on your question around the draft SCIS. We have things that we can't share publicly in terms of things or components in the document until it's made public holistically. But the thing that we're focusing on is how do we make sure that the material that we are going to publish is going to be in a way that the community is ready to hear and get all of that information, because it is quite a lot of information. I'm not gonna lie to you. Some of these reports are available already on our website, and they can be very lengthy and very difficult to navigate if you don't have someone who's there to help you try to figure out what it is you're looking for and what kind of particular things you want to focus on. So I really encourage folks to, if you haven't already, make sure that you're on that newsletter, because that'll guarantee that you get information about when we're having some of these briefings and sessions to really help folks understand and to know what to expect in such a very large document with a lot of good information. Because I know that for me, I would not want to get that document dry and on a Monday morning. I prefer to lead up to it and build up to it and understand, so I can know how to understand, absorb information. And we have one question.
Yeah, maybe a year ago I sent a couple of emails into info asking questions and never got a response.
About a year ago?
Yeah, way over a year ago.
Okay,
And so I don't trust that you'll respond to me.
that if you feel that you sent emails and you didn't get a response, I'm not going to review that. I'm going to simply say that there's also a phone line number that you can call as well. And all of our comments that we get through the info inbox come to record. And so we can make sure that if there is that we missed your email.
Where's the number?
The phone number should be on the next slide, actually.
Okay.
Because we have an Oregon number and a Washington number.
Okay.
And so you can call that number as well. And again, a thing that we mentioned way early on is that we do have office hours now. And when you navigate to our website, there will be a pop-up about the office hours, and you can select time to meet with someone on staff to get questions answered if you feel like we missed any of your questions.
I saw that.
Yes.
Okay, sorry, Matt. How's this gonna impact going over to Vancouver? Where's the first exit going north through Vancouver that you can get off on? Can you get off on 14? How do you get to the city of Vancouver?
So now we're gonna go back to some of these map questions. I did not forget about a question about the longshore or the golf course. So we'll answer those two after this one.
So we will still have that ramp. So today, you go north, take the exits, you SR14, the Route 14. That's still going to be there. It's going to be at a different elevation, but that connection is still going to be there.
Exit 1A.
Was that the ramp you were asking about? Did I?
The other one was how do you get downtown Vancouver?
Okay, so downtown Vancouver is where we have options. So today we take the loop ramp here and go down here, and that is still is one of the options that we're studying. It's still, the ramps are still going to be the same, and that's the C Street options that Casey mentioned. So we are studying having that ramp in there, but we're also studying another option where we won't have this ramp, but we'll have to access downtown through Mill Lane, the next interchange.
So again, just keep in mind that we are studying these different options. It doesn't mean that one is chosen or preferred over the other yet. It's just these are the options we are studying. And then there's
the comments.
Yes. And so let's go back to the map because there was a question about navigation to the golf course, and there was a question for someone who is a longshoreman wondering how this will impact them getting to and from work on the island. And
she left.
oh, she might have left. So
Thank you for your time. And I would like to, my question comes from not only myself, there's at least 15 longshore families that live on this island. And we have shifts 24 hours a day, and actually we're gonna be the ones that are offloading the materials for this bridge. But the main thing that scares me, and I'd just like some confirmation or clarification, is that southbound. Right now, when we go to work, we get on southbound and we go to the Marine or to the Expo Center, a direct shot. And that's already taking a lot of time. And I don't know if those, when you go over this auxiliary bridge, are those little roundabouts, but all I would ask is that before you guys go back to the drawing board, go sit right now in that one roundabout to get from Marine Drive to get on here. And it's about an hour. So that there scares all of us. And I do know when it comes to emergency services, that's gonna be what's gonna scare all of us that actually live on here, not people on foot or bikes. Thank you for your time.
So we did not go through Marine Drive interchange at this time, just in the interest of time, but we hear you on that round going around. I sat in that traffic too, so I just know how long it takes in there because taking the exit. So this is a new interchange you're looking at. So if you're coming south on I-5 and trying to go on Marine Drive here, it's going to be a direct ramp and making a right turn and going on Marine Drive. So there's not going to be the loop ramp to get from I-5.
You don't have to take the auxiliary.
Expo isn't going to
If you're coming
So
from
if
Hayden
you're coming
South from Hayden
The
Island.
Expo is going to lose a lot of parking.
If you're coming from Hayden Island, you would have to take this
Parking
bridge, but if you're
trains
coming on
and-
I-5, you wouldn't have to take that bridge.
She's talking from Hayden Island.
Okay.
I live on the island and so do 15 other at least
Okay,
families
okay.
that need to go right there. So that's what we would just like the information on from you guys.
Okay. So,
That looks really complicated to get there.
This is a mess.
So the small circles are intersections, and we present those. We present it as a roundabout, but we do an analysis to see what the best intersection control is, whether it's signal, roundabout, stop controlled. So we have work to do on that. We just put a representation in. Thank you. Yeah, welcome.
I have one question I don't understand, and maybe you can clear it up. it's the getting on to SR-14. Now, Bob Orblatt, who is a big skeptic of all this, he says that was like a 7.6 grade and it was illegal or something like that. I may completely misunderstand him, but it does seem like that is a very high bridge, and how can you keep it down to 3.9% grade?
So there are two questions. So the 3.9% grade is on the bridge right here. But as we're getting here, that's a reason why you see a longer ramp over here and not just like coming to the existing ground over here. So this whole thing going to SR-14 is a bridge, and this is where we're getting back to existing, and we will be underneath on existing by the time we get to the land bridge, like well before we get to the land bridge.
I'm sorry.
We're designing those to our standards that also meets federal standards, both set by DOTs that fall within that. So I understand there's other people with opinions, but we are designing those within our
well,
current
I
standards.
understand that. It just seems hard to imagine that it could be no steeper than the bridge itself, but I'm not a designer, so I'll take your word for it.
No worries. I mean, again, I can't emphasize enough how helpful it is to have the office hours now, so we can actually show you what this kind of looks like and help people wrap their brains around it, because we don't expect people to be engineers, experts. I'm not an engineer or an architect in any way, shape, or form, but the office hours is designed to help folks get to that level of understanding so they can really see and know and retain what information is being given. There's a couple more questions. In case anyone's wondering, it's almost 9.
Okay, my first question is, we were told that because of the rose quarters coming through the bridge, we wouldn't be able to save more than a couple of minutes with this whole new bridge situation. So my second question is, if that be the case or anything even close to it, that we're not saving any time coming, are we thinking about, instead of doing something like this, going like to St. Helens with another bridge, or maybe Camas with another bridge to get the traffic off of I-5 and going the directions it wants to go? Instead of everybody funneled over one bridge.
So the first part of it is like when the document comes out end of this year, when the document comes out end of this year, we'll be able to see how much time savings we'll get compared to existing and in the future. So that we'll have different times for the 1 aux lane, for the 2 aux lane, for the different options will have different time savings, and we'll see that when the report comes out end of the year.
We're on the freeway every single day, and every single day is stopped. So I just need to understand, this isn't gonna be a big benefit, is it?
So, as Shilpa said, it really depends on the different configurations to know how much time each different configuration could potentially save us. And as we do more investigation, as we do more research, as we do more planning and figure out some of these other pieces that we haven't got to that part yet, we'll be able to answer that question with a little bit more clarity and more certainty.
So the second parts of your question, the first part I wanted to end also with, this program is a multimodal program. We are also providing additional choices for folks to make their travel choice. The addition of light rail, as well as the attractiveness of the facilities for active transportation to get folks additional options. So that want to make sure that's clear in that.
My husband goes to a doctor all the time. We can't take the light rail, we can't ride bicycles. So.
Yes, I completely understand that. The second part of your question is really about a third corridor. A third corridor doesn't address the purpose need for this corridor, this project. So I just want to be clear. A third corridor idea is actually a really great idea for the areas to think about, and it does take a long time to plan that out through all of the local agencies that do both the planning and the duration of the analysis that goes through that. This project isn't undertaking that third corridor, but that's not this project saying that's a bad idea. This project is addressing the I-5 corridor.
I understand that. It's just that I've been talking about this for 30 years.
So let's take these 2 questions up here first.
I have 2, I hope so.
Yep.
out there, quick. I have not heard much about HOV lanes, either on this bridge or from Wilsonville to the juncture of I-5 and 205 in north of Vancouver. Is there some dissatisfaction with having HOV lanes from one end of the south of Portland to north of Vancouver? And I know.
So great comments about system-wide HOV lanes. To again, probably talking about regional planning. There were pretty good consideration of HOV lanes or hot lanes or managed lanes is another way to say it within the study that we did for the original record of decision through the Columbia River crossing. In addition to that, actually Washington undertook a test of an HOV lane. And as you know, Portland has their HOV lane coming northbound. But I think it's a really great comment from a regional perspective on how that region system works. Where CRC ended was it didn't address the issues more on a regional scale in a small area. However, there are other discussions about how managing the current system or what we're putting in place, such as using bus on shoulder, can assist if there is congestion, that where we can get transit through in a 5-mile stretch. So there's still discussions about how we can best use the system that's there without that. Great regional conversation though, both Metro and RTC. So.
And my last question is it deals with the purpose and need. And just because it says here, federal guidance, adding equity and climate considerations would likely require a significantly longer environmental process. Why would that be so bad?
We are adding it, and we haven't clarified. We have already added that. So we have the purpose and need statements from CRC, which were the seismic, the retrofit, or not retrofit, like reconstruction of the bridge to be earthquake resistant. We had the congestion, was the second one. Safety was the other one because we have a lot of crashes in this area. Active transportation, transit, and freight. So those were the 6 purpose and need statements that CRC had. We're saying we are using the same 6 purpose and need, but we did add equity and climate lens.
But it's not part of the purpose and need.
Correct.
Yes.
It's not.
It is, yeah, it is not, but.
It's not part of the purpose and need, but we're using that in all of the aspects of both the design, the community outreach and the planning, to have that at the forefront of all of the efforts that we're working on.
So everything we look at, we said we're going to look at it. It's maybe not purpose and need statement amendment, but it's as important as purpose and need. So we're going to have that lens for every improvement that we look at.
So
Any questions that I have left over, which is a lot, I'll write them out and send them to.
The info, send them to me, send them to the phone number below.
Okay.
And there's a couple more questions I want to make sure we get out loud so I can write them down and make sure I got them. So let's go here, and then I saw a hand back there.
Okay. Did I understand correctly that from the time you first break ground to the time the entire project is finished, it's estimated to be 10 to 15 years?
So you heard that correctly. It's a
Okay.
10 to 15 year rough estimate. We will have a delivery plan early next year that will talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, there are stages of this project that will be built along the way, and you will get benefits as you go along the way as we, build one of those, as Shilpa was getting to, as we were starting on one area. We want to see those benefits come as early as possible. So you might not see parts of construction till the later years.
Right.
So, yes.
There's a question here.
Are you able to move the main channel closer to the middle of the river so that the height of the bridge is closer to the center of the
You're talking about right.
So I'll answer that. The channel that we're proposing as the main channel really is the next. It's a little bit of a complicated answer because when we install a new bridge, it has a different spacing for the piers in the river, and then the existing bridge. And there are 3 current authorized channels out there with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And to build a new bridge that has different spacing and keep the existing one in place and do all the construction and jockeying, we have to figure out what the best way to construct it is, have there be minimal impacts along that duration of the program that we're building the bridge, which Shilpa is getting to about 5 to 7 years of discussion. We have to go through all of that to figure out where that best channel is, and we are proposing that the main channel is moving 1 span to the south towards the river, the middle of the ridge. It's not in the middle of the river. It is just slightly 1 span south. We propose to rearrange those channels, and we're working with the Army Corps and the Coast Guard on that. And that also has a little bit to do with the airspace as well. We have to try to keep below the airspace and above the river navigation. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't see the person in the back that had their hand raised earlier. I do see your cards. I'll come grab those from you. Do you want to verbalize your?
Yes, please. Okay. I live right on.
Just moving on. Was he asking a question? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
I live right on the river, and from my living room, I can look across and see the bridge. It's quite wonderful to see it raise and lower. And at night, on the top of those towers, you see the red lights. That's what I want y'all to keep, because it makes me feel good. I'm living here.
So I have news for you. In all of our designs, there will likely be red lights on the bridge.
All right.
Because we are so close to the air navigation, that likely. So I can't promise them, but likely.
Yes, just keep them in the same place. Now, next question. What are our neighbors?
She has one more question, and I don't see any other hand raised.
A neighbor of mine has raised the issue, will we have a troll under the bridge?
Control?
Troll.
Oh, a troll.
Yes.
Ah.
Like they have in Seattle.
That's
Have the answer to that.
I wouldn't put it past City of Portland to
Yes.
install a troll.
Exactly.
I wouldn't put it past City of Portland. Yes.
I'd just like to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sorry about the audio.
Information. Still more to come.
Thank you
Yes,
for having
this is
us.
just the beginning.
Please let us know your
Happy
comments.
to come back, answer more questions.
Okay.
I'm going to grab some of our